In today's class, we will be discussing about the bones of appendicular skeleton. We have seen appendicular skeleton consists of bones which are appended or attached to the axial skeleton. And in this, you will be studying about shoulder girdle and bones of upper limb, pelvic girdle and bones of lower limb. So these are the bones which are called as bones of appendicular skeleton. Now let's see the bones of shoulder girdle with upper limbs. Shoulder girdle consists of 4 bones. They are 2 scapula and 2 clavicle. The scapula is a triangle shaped bone and this is also called as shoulder blade, whereas the clavicle is an S-shaped bone and it is also called as collar bone. The shoulder girdle consists of 2 clavicles and 2 scapula. Now let's see about the clavicle. The clavicle is an S-shaped collar bone and it lies on either side of the sternum. And this clavicle has 2 extremities, one which forms a joint with the sternum called as sternoclavicular joint and the other which forms a joint with the acromion process of scapula and this joint is called as acromioclavicular joint. And this clavicle is the only bony link between the axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton because it gives attachment with that of sternum and scapula. Next, we will see about scapula. This scapula is also called as shoulder blade and this scapula is triangular in shape and this lies on the posterior chest wall and between the rib cage and this shoulder blade lies the muscles. Scapula has 4 prominent margins. The superior called as the superior angle, inferior angle, medial border and lateral border. Posteriorly there is a clear ridge called as spine and above the spine lies the supraspinous process and below the spine lies the infraspinous process. Towards the lateral end of this scapula lies a cavity called as glenoid cavity and the head of humerus. The humerus is the bone of upper arm and this head of the humerus lies in this glenoid cavity to form the shoulder joint and above this glenoid cavity consists of a coracoid process which gives attachment to the muscles and at the end of the spine we have a prominence which lies above and this prominence is called as acromion process which forms an acromioclavicular joint with the clavicle. Now let's see the limbs which are attached to the shoulder girdle and these limbs which are attached to the shoulder girdle are the upper limbs which consists of humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. The humerus is the bone of upper arm and this humerus consists of a head which forms the shoulder joint with the glenoid cavity of scapula and it consists of 2 prominent tubercles, the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle and between these tubercles lies the bicipital groove or it is also called as intertubercular sulcus and this intertubercular sulcus gives attachment to one of the tendon of biceps muscle, whereas at the distal portion of this humerus it consists of a trochlea and which forms articulation with the radius and ulna to form the elbow joint. Apart from this, just above the trochlea, it consists of medial epicondyle and lateral epicondyle, and between them it consists of coracoid fossa, which gives attachment to the muscles or tendons, whereas above which it consists of medial supracondylar ridge and lateral supracondylar ridge, which gives attachment to the tendons of muscles of biceps and triceps. Next, we will see the muscles of the lower arm, that is the radius and ulna. This ulna is the longest of these radius and ulna, and when the palm is faced upwards, the ulna, it lies medially. At the proximal region of the ulna, we are having an trochlear notch in which the trochlea of the humerus sits in, and there is a coronoid process below the trochlear notch. And both the radius and ulna has facets for articulation with the humerus and which forms the elbow joint. Whereas at the distal end, both the radius and ulna have the styloid process which gives attachment to the muscles. And there is a slightly flexible radio-ulnar joint on both the proximal and distal ends of the bone. And between this radius and ulna lies the interosseous membrane, which is a fibrous tissue, and this gives the movement of radius and ulna so that they won't be displaced from their positions even on rotation. So that this gives attachment to the shafts of these two long bones and also maintains the relative position of these two arms when there are any forces that are applied on the elbow and the wrist. Now we will see the bones of wrist, and these bones are examples of short bones and they are called as carpals. There are 8 carpals which are arranged in 2 rows, 4 in each row, and they are named accordingly from the lateral to the medial ends. In the proximal row, it consists of 4 carpals. They are scaphoid, lunate, trichitrum, pisiform, and in the distal row, it consists of 4 carpals. They are trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and hamate. So these are the 8 carpal bones which are arranged in 2 rows: scaphoid, lunate, trichitrum, pisiform, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and hamate. And these carpals are closely arranged with each other and they allow limited amount of movement between them. And this tendons of muscles, they pass through this wrist carpals and they are attached to the bones distally. And these carpals, they form a joint with the radius and ulna superiorly and with the metacarpals inferiorly. Now let's see metacarpals. Metacarpals are 5 bones which form the palm of the hand, and these are numbered from 1 to 5. And these metacarpals, they form articulation with the top carpals superiorly and phalanges inferiorly. When coming to this phalanges, there are 14 phalanges. There are 3 phalanges in each finger and 2 phalanges in the thumb finger, making a total of 14 phalanges, which forms the hinge joints with each other. Now we will see about the bones of pectoral girdle. Now we will see about the bones of pelvic girdle and lower limbs. The pelvic girdle consists of 2 bones, which are also called as innominate bones or hip bones. These 2 innominate bones along with the sacrum and coccyx together is called as the pelvis. The innominate bone is formed by a fusion of 3 different bones, which are ilium, ischium and pubis. The ilium is present superiorly, whereas the ischium is present anteriorly. The ilium is present superiorly and pubis is present anteriorly, whereas the ischium is present inferiorly and posteriorly. And all the 3 bones unite at one region, which leads to formation of a depression which is called as acetabulum. And this acetabulum is the site where the ball of the femur forms a joint with the innominate bone, and this forms the ball and socket joint in the lower limbs. Now let's see what are the features of this innominate bone. We have seen that there are 2 innominate bones, or which are also called as hip bones, and these innominate bones are fused with sacrum to form sacroiliac joint, which is a type of synovial joint, and it is stronger and bears most of the weight of the body, especially when seated. The ilium has an iliac crest, and it also has anterior superior iliac spine and posterior superior iliac spine, inferior iliac spine. The pubis, which is present anteriorly, it fuses with the pubis of the other innominate bone and forms a cartilaginous joint, and this is called as symphysis pubis. The ischium, which is present posteriorly and inferiorly, has a prominence called as ischial tuberosity, and this ischial tuberosity is the one which will bear our weight when we are seated on any flat surface. And we have seen that these 2 innominate bones and the sacrum together form the pelvis, and this pelvis can be divided into true pelvis and false pelvis. The promontory of the sacrum, means that is the protrusion of the sacrum, and the iliopectinal lines of the innominate bone together form the brim of the pelvis, and that particular region which is present above this brim, it is called as false pelvis, and below that region it is called as true pelvis. There is a slight difference in the shape of the pelvis of that of male and female. The female pelvis is broader and it is more shallow and it is more roomier when compared to that of male pelvis, and this is made up of many lighter bones, and this also helps the movement of the baby during childbirth. Now let's see the bones of lower limbs. It starts with femur. Femur is the heaviest and the longest bone in the skeletal system. It has a almost spherical head, and this head forms a ball and socket joint with the acetabulum. The hip joint which is the ball and socket joint of the lower limb, is formed between the head of the femur and also the acetabulum. And the distal third of this femur is flatter, and this consists of popliteal surface posteriorly and patellar surface anteriorly, which gives attachment to various tendons. At the distal end, there are two articular condyles which form an articulation with that of tibia and kneecap or patella. The tibia or the shin bone is one of the two limbs. The tibia, which is also called as the shin bone, is one of the two bones of lower leg. The lower leg, it consists of two bones, tibia and fibula. Tibia, it lies medially, whereas fibula, it lies laterally. And tibia has a flat surface superiorly, which allows articulation with the condyles of femur. And the head of tibia, it articulates with the fibula both proximally and distally to form tibiofibular joint. And once again we can see an interosseous membrane between the tibia and fibula, which allows the movement of tibia and fibula and prevents the displacement of tibia and fibula. The proximal end of the tibia, it forms the knee joint, whereas the distal end of the tibia, it forms the ankle joint. An ankle joint is formed between the tibia, fibula and calcaneus and talus. At the distal end of the tibia, it has medial malleolus, and this medial malleolus is a downward projection of tibia, and this helps in stabilizing the ankle joint. The fibula is the long slender bone of the lower leg, and fibula, it lies laterally, and fibula forms a proximal tibiofibular joint, and distally it forms the ankle joint with that of tibia and also the talus. The lateral malleolus, which is a downward projection of the distal fibula, this also helps in stabilizing the ankle joint, similar to that of medial malleolus. Now let's see about the patella. Patella is also called as kneecap, and patella is roughly triangular in shape, and it is the example of a sesamoid bone. Patella, it forms the knee joint with fibula. Patella, it forms the knee joint with tibia and femur. Patella is placed in the patellar surface, which is the flat surface of the femur, and it is enclosed in the patellar tendon, and this tendon is the tendon of quadriceps femoris muscle. Now let's see the tarsal bones. We have seen that the wrist has carpal bones. There are 8 carpal bones, whereas the ankle consists of tarsal bones, and there are 7 tarsal bones. They are talus, calcaneus, navicular, cuboid and 3 cuneiforms. These are the 7 tarsal bones: talus, calcaneus, navicular, cuboid and 3 cuneiforms. The tibia, fibula and talus, 3 are involved in formation of the ankle joint, whereas the calcaneus, it forms the heel of the foot. And these bones, they articulate with each other and also with the metatarsals. Now let's see metatarsals. There are 5 metatarsals. which form the sole of the foot. As there are 5 metacarpals which form the palm of the hand, there are 5 metatarsals which form the sole of the foot. And this metatarsals, proximally they are articulated with that of tarsals, and distally they are articulated with that of phalanges. When coming to phalanges, there are 14 phalanges in a similar manner to that of fingers. Each toe has 3 phalanges, whereas the great toe, which is also called as hallux, has only 2 phalanges. There are 14 phalanges, 5 metatarsals, 7 tarsals, 3 limb bones, 1 patella and 1 innominate bone in each side of the pelvic girdle and lower limb. And these are the limbs, and these are the bones of pelvic girdle and lower limbs.